And from a Kubernetes standpoint, have you engaged much with the community? Have there been things that you've really needed to see get done in that container orchestration ecosystem for your telco use case in particular? And have you engaged at all, or has it been mostly feedback, or where does that stand?
No. So within the approach that Swisscom has taken is whatever is available in the CNCF landscape, or it's mainly the graduated projects, right? Because you also need to make sure that we pick the right project that which is maintained in the long term, right? So mainly all the so if you look at the telco applications, and if you look it from a lens that it's treated as an IT application, all the telco applications, for all the telco applications, we can reuse the tooling that's been used for the IT related applications. So meaning the network functions can be deployed using one of the projects is called Flux to deploy the application. So, and secret management, it could be Vault or HashiCorp Vault, for example. So these things we do use that which have worked in a native way. But there are these proprietary interfaces which telco uses, like netconf or Yang for lifecycle management 5G core or any network function. There we struggle quite a bit to bring this into the Kubernetes layer, or how do you do it in a cloud native way? And one of the projects that we collaborated closely is Project Nephio. There's one of the lead automation architects in the project. I can mention his name. His name is Wim Hendricks. So we have collaborated with his team on using one of the, I think it's one of the most cutting edge tools to do netconf operations in a cloud native way. And there we have collaborated quite a lot to have this tool. So we are using that in our environments now.
And one of the reasons I bring it up is because, I remember back in the days of telco early on getting involved in virtual machines and openStack, and a particularly contentious discussion that occurred when folks from AT&T were asking for these changes to be made in openStack. And at the time, it was very early on for AT&T, and they didn't know that if they wanted a change done, it was their responsibility to do the change, as opposed to providing requirements to this open source community to have them change to support the telco industry. Nephio is an interesting example because that is mostly driven by telco organizations, either operators or vendors, working in collaboration to do things that are needed in that Kubernetes ecosystem for the benefit of telco. So the approach, I'd say the maturity of the telco industry and how they engage with open source has really, in many ways, flourished over the last decade, between what it took and how that engagement went with openStack and how it's going with Kubernetes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I started my career in this so-called NFVI, or network function virtualization, and it has evolved quite a lot, both from the operator side as well as from the vendor side. I think there's a nice balance between vendors using the open source tools versus the operators using open source tools, right? So it can go both directions. And for an example, Project Nephio, it has a very good, good focus on how to bring the life cycle of the 5G or the network core in a cloud native way, but it's not something that we can use off the shelf, because we need the vendors to comply to such a way of working or implement the software, right, and such, right? Because us as operators, we don't write the network function code. We get it from the software suppliers, and there you need to balance this work.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting too, in the sense that I think historically, the way the telco industry between vendors and operators used to work was all through standards bodies, right? And that's where that collaboration worked. Now it's done in open source, or more and more is being done in open source, and trying to figure out that dance. Who's doing what in the vendor space, who's doing what in the operator space, how that collaboration works, getting developers as opposed to system architects who write specs, getting developers who write code together. And this is the transition that I think the industry is in. And it's a big one.
Yeah, and then the other side to the coin is you also, like as you mentioned, we also have these standard bodies, and they evolve quite slowly compared to the open source communities such as like Linux, like CNCF, or also the projects within the Linux Foundation, this landscape. So so it's like a hexagonal diagonal problem. Because even within the organizations, the DevOps engineers also they have the freedom, right? So they also try to get new tools, etc. And how do we comply this with the vendor provided tools? And then at the same time, they're trying to comply to certain standard, right? And so you have this three-dimensional thing going on. Yeah.
Yeah, and how they fit at any given point in time is the challenge. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.